Hello, welcome to the first lesson of English Analysis, looking at the reading section. Over the next 10 weeks, we're going to be thinking a lot about how you can actually pick out good key quotes, good word choices, good structure, and write about them in the appropriate way for your exams, whether that's for a short comprehension question, a slightly more long analysis question, or a full-blown evaluation question. Plus, we'll also do some comparison, of course. So over the next 10 weeks, we'll be looking at all of those things together. There's going to be a checklist. If you want to look at the study guide, you have access to that as well. But today we're just going to dive straight in and look at language device analysis. So just before we get started, if you are not sure about language devices, you're not sure whether you know what you need to know ready for your GCSEs, you can go to ututoring.com/techniques. There's a list of relevant language devices in there that I highly recommend that you check out, and it's got explanations and examples, and it's even got quotes probably from the books and plays and poems that you've been studying for your GCSEs. So check that out if you need a little bit of extra support. If you're lucky enough to be one of my students, talk to me in our next lesson about all that. So language device analysis. What are you actually doing when you're analyzing language? What does this word analysis mean? Well, effectively, you've probably heard this many times from different teachers, but maybe not to this level of detail. What you're doing is you're breaking down the words, the connotations, the techniques, and what you're trying to do is then explaining the effects that are created by that language. Now, you can get more than one idea from a quote, and we'll look at that as well today. We're using a text that most of the students that are live will have done with me at some point in the past. This is the exam text from about 3-4 years ago now, time flies. But we're actually going to really look at how do you talk about this, because a lot of students, what they'll do is they'll pick language, they'll be able to find words, they'll be able to even find some of these techniques that I've listed here: personification, metaphor, simile, alliteration, and so on. By the way, if you don't know what any of these means, please look them up, please work that out, use what I've already said, my website or some other website. Make sure you know these things. These are important techniques. But they'll be able to find these, but they won't be able to then execute and actually explain how these things create good effects. So we're just going to look at 3 different effects that are created through this extract today. I've already put some things in bold. I might go off piste at certain points because I quite enjoy that. So I might pick a few other things outside of these, or I might skip some of these if I don't think they're useful. But let's start by thinking about this idea. Let's imagine that in your exam, for AQA students, this is often question 2. For Excel and OCR, this is any question that looks at like how language is used to describe something or language is used to present something. But let's look at how disgust is created in this short section. So we'll read it together and then we'll get started. We'll actually break this down and we'll get to the really useful stuff. So the tyrant lizard raised itself. Its armored flesh glittered like 1,000 green coins. The coins, crusted with slime, steamed. In the slime, tiny insects wriggled, so that the entire body seemed to twitch and undulate, even while the monster itself did not move. It exhaled. The stink of raw flesh blew down the wilderness. Okay, so most of you that are watching this, I'm sure, would be able, at least vaguely, to explain to me, look, this is disgusting. And you'd even probably pick out some of these quotes. But many of you would then struggle when it comes to actually analyzing this, actually showing how the effects are there. So let's dive into a couple of them together. So we'll start with crusted with slime, steamed. Now, why does this show disgust? This is where you have to start thinking about the word choices. And today, particularly, we're looking at the language devices that are created. So for me, you've got crusted with slime. So this bit here, you could go for word choice, but we're going to talk more about that next week. But crusted with slime certainly links, let me just move this over here then, certainly links to very negative imagery. Yeah, the word crusted has connotations of something which has sort of hardened and maybe been sort of wounded or something like that. It kind of almost reminds me of scabs or something like that. And then when you add on top of that the slime and the steamed, we're now talking about sensory imagery. That's a really good thing for you to be looking out for. For AQA students, particularly for question 2, think about the 5 senses. We're going to be talking more about the 5 senses actually when we do writing later. But, if you think about the visual components, the audible components, what you hear, taste is unusual, but possibly taste, touch, yeah? If you actually, and smell, if you get some of these senses in the piece, often that's the way to explain the effects. So slime is this disgusting texture. And again, it just creates this sense of disgust. Yeah, disgusting texture. And hopefully, we're not going to be able to write paragraphs on every single point, but hopefully you can start to see how this would form into a paragraph. So, one of the ways that the writer presents the T-Rex is through making the T-Rex disgusting here. Yeah, the tyrant lizard is a T-Rex, just so you know. One of the ways he achieves this is through the quote, crusted with slime. The negative imagery of crusted gives a sense of something like a scab. It has negative connotations. It reminds us of like a wound or something like that. And then combined with the sensory imagery of the slime, it's a disgusting, unpleasant texture. Yeah. So do you see, I'm not just saying, the lizard is disgusting because it's slimy. Yeah. That's going to get you like a level 2. That's not what we want. I'm going deep into explaining the connotations, analyzing, breaking down, explaining how the language creates disgust. And you can do this for any of these quotes as well. So I'm realizing already that there's no way that I'm going to be able to do all of these examples. Let's just do 3 or 4, because I think that that's enough for you to get the point. And then a lot of my students have said it's useful when I do a sort of a model answer at the end. So I'll make sure I do a model answer with you as well. So let's do one more from Disgust and then we'll move on. So I really liked as well twitching and undulating. The tiny insects, they twitch and they undulate. So this is this horrible movement. Like you can imagine this if you can imagine like maggots or something like that in a dustbin or like near a trash can or something. You know how the maggots just kind of have this weird, like twitchy, gross sort of look to them. So again, it's imagery, but since the insects are kind of wriggling, but the monster isn't, we've now also got juxtaposition, right? Juxtaposition. So in this case, I'm going to focus more on the juxtaposition, which is used for disgust. So the juxtaposition of the wriggling, twitching insects versus the monster that doesn't move creates a sense of disgust because, now that word because is so important. I know I've told all of you about this before, but when you're analyzing, use the word because it will force you to explain better. So it creates a sense of disgust because it gives the impression that the insects are alive and moving unpleasantly on the monster without its control, without the monster's control. So it makes the insects into this disgusting like creature within itself. And the fact that they have control over the skin of the monster is just really unsettling. Imagine you've got like insects crawling on you for a minute. It's just really unpleasant and disgusting and gross. So that's another one for disgust. Now, disgust, I will admit, is a fairly niche thing to be looking at. Most of the time, most of the pieces aren't going to specifically look at disgust. a lot of pieces will be looking at the power of something, the intimidation of something. So that's why I've done those two as the next two. So let's look at the great oiled, resilient, striding legs. So here we can also technically talk about structure a little bit. You've got the fact that you've got the list of great oiled, resilient, striding legs. But for me, this one here, again, is going to be looking at the connotations, and this is also called a tricolon. I'm just going to add that to my list, tricolon, because we've got three descriptors in a row: oiled, resilient, striding. Yeah. Now, why does that add power though? You can't just, again, like I said earlier, you can't just say the T-Rex is powerful because it has big legs or because it has oiled, resilient, striding legs. That's not analysis. That's comprehension, maybe. That's showing that you understand, but you're not explaining how you understand. So it's the tricolon here. The tricolon creates a sense of power because, I'm going to use a synonym of that just to help you, due to the fact that it emphasizes some of the strength or strong attributes of the dinosaur. Yeah. So the word oiled, one of my students, is she in here right now? I don't think she is. No, she's not. But one of my students, just to shout out to Priya, she said about how the imagery of oiled actually reminded her of like a bodybuilder or a wrestler. You know, a lot of them like oil up before they like go and show off their muscles, whatever. But there's connotations of the oiled. The word great is obviously showing strength. Resilient, you can break that word resilient down and you can say, well, if something is resilient, it literally means that it overcomes obstacles. So it literally shows power because it's literally saying that the legs will overcome any obstacles that the dinosaur faces. And then the word stride, that's a powerful verb choice. If you're walking, that's kind of slow. If you're striding, that suggests more speed and pace and power and like a longer leg length as well, if it's a striding leg. So all of these things emphasize some of the strength of the dinosaur. And then you would go into the specifics. So let's just say striding implies that the dinosaur walks with great speed and pace. Okay, so you break down that language really carefully and closely. Let's do one more. So we've also got each leg, lower leg, was a piston. So each lower leg was a piston. This one here is clearly about metaphor, yeah? And so I wanted to go very specifically on metaphor with you. Metaphors, what you're doing is you're trying to take what is being compared to, what the thing is being compared to. So in this case, what the leg is being compared to. So it's a metaphor. You can do this with every metaphor. So the leg, in this case, the subject, is being compared to a piston, which is a piece of engineering. It's machinery, yeah? An engine. So again, we're not just saying that the leg or the T-Rex is shown as powerful because its leg is an engine. We're breaking it down, or its leg is a piston. We're breaking it down. So since engines are made of metal and extremely powerful, by saying that the leg of the T-Rex is a piston, the writer is saying that the leg has the power of machine or machinery. So again, do you see the difference, guys? It's not just, you know, okay, the T-Rex is powerful because its leg is a piston. That's comprehension. That's going to get you to level 2 or level 3, like I said. You must go deep into it. So the leg is powerful because, or due to the fact, or since it's being compared to a piston. A piston is a part of an engine. It's made of metal. It's extremely powerful. So comparing the leg to a machine shows that the leg is very strong. And since the leg of the T-Rex is strong, clearly the T-Rex is being conveyed as powerful. All right, good. Man, that's a lot to get through in this time. Okay, so let's finally just do ironically, this is the one I have the most for, but let's just do again 1 or 2 for intimidation. You'll see that pattern again that I've already gone through with you with power and disgust. So if any of you want me to look at a specific one here, feel free to comment as well. But let's start with a fence of teeth like daggers. And then feel free to challenge me. Like I said, if any of you that are watching want to comment and just be like, do this one, I'll do that as well. If any of these bits in bold you're not sure. Let's quickly read this one as well, just so it sets the stage a bit. So each thigh was a ton of meat, ivory, and steel mesh. From the great breathing cage of the upper body, those 2 delicate arms dangled out front, arms with hands which might pick up and examine men like toys, while the snake neck coiled. And the fence itself, and the head itself, a ton of sculptured stone, lifted easily upon the sky. Its mouth gaped, exposing a fence of teeth like daggers. Its eyes rolled, ostrich eggs, empty of all expression save hunger. It closed its mouth in a death grin. It ran, its pelvic bones crushing aside trees and bushes, its taloned feet clawing damp earth, leaving prints 6 inches deep wherever it settled its weight. Okay, so again, probably all of you reading this along with me can see intimidation here. Intimidation just means when you get like a sense of kind of fear for something, or like that something it has some sort of power or strength over you. I'm sure you see that. But let's now again dive into some of the specifics of this. So offensive teeth like daggers. Now this is a simile. So similes are quite similar to metaphors in the fact that what you can do is you can look at what the subject is and how it's being compared to something else. So similar to when we were looking at the lower leg is a piston, here we're looking at the teeth are being compared to a fence, and not only a fence, but also like daggers. So we've got a lot going on here. So the simile compares the teeth to something huge, which is a fence. I mean, I know I got quite big teeth, but I can't even imagine having teeth the size of fences. That's insane. So the teeth are fence size. So that shows the size of them. Now that's intimidating in itself, right? Intimidating due to size. And you get the sense perhaps that if a T-Rex has teeth that big and a mouth and jaws that big, that it could eat you as well. So again, that's intimidating and fear. Eat, prey, question mark. But it's also like daggers. Now daggers, you can go back to, remember I was talking earlier a little bit about connotations, like what you think of from a word. So daggers have connotations of pain, weapon, obviously, criminal, death. So the idea that its teeth are massive and deadly, basically, all of this together combined clearly shows that the T-Rex is dangerous, powerful, you could use this for power as well, and intimidating. So just remember what I said before as well. Just because I'm using this quote for intimidation doesn't mean that it can't belong in other places. I think it's a stretch to say it's disgusting. I'm not sure I could put it there, but I could definitely say that this is a demonstration of power. Okay, since none of you have added something else you'd like me to look at, totally fine. Let's look at a more unusual one, which is the death grin. So this one is oxymoron. Okay, this is oxymoron. So oxymoron is just when you put 2 words next to each other that don't typically belong together. It would be great if I could highlight the bit that I wanted. Adam, get yourself together, mate. Okay, good. So death grin. Now, why is this intimidating? What you have to do is you have to think about why these 2 words might have been put together. So again, you want to think about probably the connotations, what comes to your mind with the words. So the word grin is clearly a sort of a happiness and a smile, that sort of thing. But I will say that a grin is a bit sinister. Like if I'm smiling at you, it's like, hey, how you doing? Whereas if I'm grinning, I don't know if I can do this, but it's a bit more, I can't do it. It's just a bit more creepy. When someone grins at you, it's a bit more creepy. So there's a slight creepiness possibly to the grinning. Whereas then if you look at the word death, I mean, this is pretty obvious. It's connotations of sadness, the end of something, that sort of thing. So why is this intimidating? it's this idea that as the T-Rex is grinning at you, it's also probably presenting you with your end, with your fatality, with your death. There's a good chance it's going to kill you. Okay. Now, another thing that you want to try and do, as well as looking at analysis of points separately, like we have, is you could start to combine them. So let's just do one of those quickly. So the combination might be that just before it, it says that the eyes were empty of all expression save hunger. So you might combine these two analysis points and say that this is called synecdoche because it's the eyes represent the lack of emotion in the T-Rex, which makes it very intimidating because it doesn't care about its prey. So then you can combine these. You could say it's very intimidating because not only does it not care because it's got an empty expression and all it cares about is feeding itself through its hunger, but it also enjoys killing you. There's a death grin on its face as it attacks you with its fence of teeth like daggers. So you can combine all that together to create a really deep analysis. That's almost now starting to push into evaluation, which we'll go through in another time. Okay, so I know I'm running out of time here. So let's just very quickly try and do a very brief model answer. I don't have time to go into huge detail, I'm afraid, but let's go through at least a quick model answer of how you would do an analysis. So something that might be helpful is just to quickly do a comprehension. I just said I have no time and I'm setting myself more work, but the comprehension would just be something like the T-Rex is intimidating because it has big teeth and a scary smile and is hungry. Yeah? You're not explaining it though, right? You're just comprehending at this point. This is lower level. This is the lower questions, the smaller mark questions. To get to analysis, what you need to do is say something like, one of the ways in which the T-Rex is presented as intimidating is through the figurative language which the writer uses to describe it. Now that's a fancy word. Figurative language is pretty much looking at similes and metaphors and basically non-literal language. So you can use that term as well, figurative language, if you're talking about metaphors or similes. So surprise, surprise, I'm going to talk about the fence of teeth like daggers, which we've already gone through. Firstly, the fence of teeth like daggers conveys intimidation because there's that word because in there that I'm telling you to use. I'm telling you it will help you remember this, use this. Conveys intimidation because the teeth being as large as fences immediately gives the reader a sense of the power of the T-Rex. And since the teeth will be used to devour prey, this is highly fearsome. Further, the fact that the teeth are daggers portrays how sharp and deadly they can be, especially since daggers carry connotations of death and battle. Okay, and I could go on, but unfortunately I'm running out of time now. But do you see how even in that just quick 2 minutes, I'm not just doing comprehension anymore. I'm breaking down that language. I'm explaining that language. I'm showing how that language, those devices, help to create this effect, this intimidation. So I hope that was helpful. And yeah, we'll be doing a lot